Hey guys, tonight we begin with a journey. Not through space, not through time and a machine. No, something far more visceral. We're stepping back, way back, to a time that Hollywood and your high school textbooks might have painted in shades of marble, philosophy, and muscular heroes striking noble poses. Ancient Greece, the cradle of democracy, the birthplace of theater, the land of Socrates and Alexander the Great. Sounds pretty epic, right? Like a holiday destination for time travelers with a toga fetish. Yeah, about that. Forget the sun-drenched villas, the perfectly sculpted bodies lounging by crystal-clear pools, the intellectual debates happening casually over a goblet of fine wine. Forget the notion that this was some kind of golden age of leisure and enlightenment, where everyone was just ripped and ready to drop philosophical bombs while wearing a fashionable bedsheet. The truth, my friends, is far, far less glamorous. In fact, if you were magically transported back to, say, classical Athens, circa 430 before Common Era, you probably wouldn't last a single day. Not even until sunset. And before you get comfortable thinking this is just another historical lecture, let me set the mood. Dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, or just the whir of your own existential dread kicking in. Settle in, because we're about to explore exactly why your modern, pampered, germophobic, expectation-laden self would hit the ancient Greek dirt face first before the first olive oil delivery of the morning. And hey, while you're getting comfortable, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world for this particular brand of historical misery. Okay, you ready? You sure? No, you're not. Because you're used to waking up in a clean, climate-controlled room on a soft mattress, probably with an alarm telling you exactly when the suffering begins. In ancient Greece, waking up is less of a gentle transition and more of a jarring return to uncomfortable reality. So congratulations. You've just woken up in ancient Greece. Specifically, let's say you're in Athens. Not some grand house on the next hill overlooking the city. No. You're a relatively ordinary person. Maybe an artisan, maybe a small farmer who lives just outside the city walls but has business within, or perhaps just, you dumped unceremoniously into a small, cramped dwelling in the city itself. Your bed? If you're lucky, it's a simple wooden frame strung with ropes, maybe a straw or wool mattress. No memory foam, no spring coil technology. It's probably lumpy, itchy, and likely home to a thriving community of small, biting creatures we'll get to later. If you're unlucky, you're sleeping on the floor, perhaps on a reed mat, or just on the packed earth. Either way, it's cold in winter, stiflingly hot in summer, and never, ever truly comfortable. You wake up with the sun, because there's no concept of sleeping in unless you're rich, sick, or a slave who finished their brutal tasks early. The light isn't filtered through clean glass windows. Glass was rare and expensive, but through an opening in the wall, maybe covered by a shutter, or just open, which means flies, dust, and whatever smells are drifting in from outside are your first sensory input of the day. And oh, the smells. Let's talk about hygiene, or rather, the profound, soul-crushing lack of it by your modern standards. You need to relieve yourself. Where do you go? There are no indoor toilets with flushing mechanisms. No porcelain thrones, no bidets, no concept of toilet paper. Certainly not the soft, quilted kind. Your options are limited. You might have a chamber pot inside, which you'll have to empty. Where? Into the street. Yes, that's right. Just dump it into the narrow, unpaved alleyway outside your door. Or if you live in a slightly better off neighborhood, maybe there's a communal cesspit somewhere nearby. Or if you're in a very rural area, you just find a discreet, or not so discreet, spot outside. The point is, human waste is everywhere. It mingles with animal waste, with garbage, with stagnant water. So, your first steps of the day, perhaps barefoot or in flimsy sandals, are likely through a biological minefield. The smell, even early in the morning before the sun bakes everything, is pungent, an acrid, cloying mix of decay, sewage, sweat, and general filth. Your modern nose, accustomed to disinfectants and air fresheners, would recoil instantly. You'd probably gag. This isn't a fleeting smell. It's the atmospheric constant of ancient Greece. Okay, so you've navigated the literal minefield outside your door. Now to wash up. A shower? A bath? Forget it, unless you're rich enough to have access to a public bathhouse. And even those weren't exactly sparkling clean by today's standards. Your daily ablutions, if you do them at all, consist of maybe splashing some water from a communal well or a fetch jug onto your face and hands. Soap, as you know, it doesn't exist. They might use lye or oils mixed with ash or sand as abrasives, but it's not the bubbly, fragrant stuff you're used to. You're not getting clean. You're just reducing the visible grime slightly. Your teeth? You might chew on a twig or rub some rough cloth with a bit of abrasive powder if you're feeling fancy. Tooth decay was rampant and painful. Dental care was non-existent. So morning breath? Oh, it was universal and potent. Don't expect any fresh mini-greetings. Your clothes. You're probably wearing a simple tunic, a chiton, or a cloak, a himation, made of wool or linen. These aren't items that get washed daily or even weekly. Washing clothes was a laborious process involving lye, urine, yes, urine contains ammonia, a natural cleaner, and stomping on them in a river or basin. So your clothes are stiff, itchy, and hold on to the smells of your life. Sweat, smoke from cooking fires, the general funk of the environment. Putting them on is another layer of discomfort. You're already miserable, assaulted by smells, discomfort, and the sheer physical presence of uncleanness. But you have to leave the house. It's daylight, time to work. Stepping out into the street is a full sensory assault. The streets are narrow, winding, and unpaved. They're dusty when dry, muddy when wet. There's trash everywhere. Food scraps, broken pottery, animal carcasses, and yes, more human waste. Animals, dogs, donkeys, goats, chickens, wander freely, adding their own contributions to the ground covering. The noise is constant. Vendors shouting, animals braying and bleating, the clatter of sandals and wooden wheels, the general din of a crowded, busy settlement with no concept of noise pollution. The air, beyond the smells, is thick with dust and smoke from countless small fires. Everyone is cooking over wood or charcoal indoors or in small courtyards. The air quality is terrible. If you have asthma or any respiratory issues, well, congratulations, you've just entered an environmental nightmare. You're coughing, your eyes are watering. You have to walk through this. There are no sidewalks, no paved roads designed for comfortable pedestrian travel. You're jostling with people, animals, and carts. Pickpockets are a constant threat in crowded areas. And disease? Oh, disease is lurking in every shadow, every puddle, every breath. Let's talk about disease for a moment. Ancient Greece had none of your modern understanding of germ theory. They might talk about miasma, bad air, or the wrath of the gods. They didn't know about bacteria or viruses. Simple cuts could lead to fatal infections. A common cold could turn into pneumonia and kill you. Dysentery was rampant, spread easily by the lack of sanitation. Smallpox, measles, influenza, these swept through populations with terrifying speed and lethality, especially in crowded cities like Athens. Remember that plague that struck Athens during the Peloponnesian War? The one Thucydides described? That wasn't a one-off bad flu season. Epidemics were a regular, horrifying part of life. Your immune system, used to a relatively sterile modern environment and childhood vaccinations, would be completely unprepared for the onslaught of ancient pathogens. You'd be exposed to things your body has never encountered, and it would likely not react well. You'd probably get sick within hours. A fever, vomiting, diarrhea, debilitating symptoms with no access to antibiotics, antivirals, or even basic rehydration therapy. Let's assume somehow you've avoided immediate, debilitating illness. You're trying to get to wherever you need to go. Work, perhaps? What kind of work? Unless you're one of the tiny percentage of wealthy landowners, merchants, or prominent citizens, your work is going to be physically demanding and likely monotonous. If you're an artisan, a potter, a blacksmith, a weaver, you're working with simple tools by hand for long hours, often in cramped, poorly lit workshops. It's hot, dusty, and repetitive. Physical strain, injuries, and chronic conditions from the work are common. No ergonomic chairs, no safety goggles, no workers' compensation. If you're a farmer, even a small one, it's backbreaking labor from sunup to sundown. Plowing with oxen, planting, harvesting, all done manually under the hot Mediterranean sun. Injuries from tools, animals, or just sheer exhaustion are daily risks. And your harvest isn't guaranteed. Drought, pests, or war could wipe out your livelihood, leaving you and your family facing starvation. If you're a laborer hired by the day for construction, loading ships, or other manual tasks, the work is brutal, the pay meager, and there's no job security. If you get sick or injured, you don't work, you don't get paid, and you likely starve. This brings us to another uncomfortable truth. Ancient Greek society, even in democratic Athens, was built on a massive foundation of slavery. A significant portion of the population were slaves with zero rights. They performed the most grueling, dangerous, and undesirable work. Mining, rowing the warships, laboring in fields or workshops, domestic service. If you weren't a free citizen, you were either a medic, a resident foreigner with limited rights, or a slave. And let's be clear, even if you were a citizen, life was often incredibly hard. But if you were a slave, your existence was one of constant toil, potential brutality, and complete lack of freedom. You could be bought, sold, or punished at your owner's whim. Your survival depended entirely on the often indifferent needs of your master. You wouldn't last a day as a slave because the sheer psychological shock of absolute dehumanization, coupled with the physical demands, would break you immediately. Your modern mind cannot comprehend that level of bondage. So, you're working, you're sweating, you're uncomfortable, you're surrounded by smells and noise and potential pathogens. It's probably midday now. You're hungry. What's for lunch? Food in ancient Greece was simple, repetitive, and often bland by modern standards. The staple diet was barley, often made into a porridge or flatbread. Olives, figs, grapes, and other fruits and vegetables were seasonal. Legumes like lentils and chickpeas were common. Meat was rare, usually reserved for religious sacrifices or special occasions, and even then, it was often just organ meat or less desirable cuts. Fish was more common if you lived near the coast, but still not an everyday luxury for most. You'd eat barley bread, maybe dipped in olive oil with some olives or figs, maybe a bit of cheese if you could afford it. Wine was commonly drunk, often diluted with water, as the water supply wasn't always safe. But it wasn't the variety of foods you're used to. No refrigeration, obviously, so food preservation was limited to drying, salting, or pickling. Food spoilage was common, leading to food poisoning. Your lunch would be meager, probably cold, and eaten quickly wherever you were working. No comfortable lunch breaks in climate-controlled canteens. Hydration? You drink water from a public fountain or well. Remember the sanitation issues? That water source is easily contaminated. Or you drink that diluted wine. Dehydration is a real risk, especially during the hot summers, compounded by the physical labor. Let's talk about the social environment. Ancient Greek society was hierarchical and could be brutal. Free male citizens were at the top, but even among them, there were divisions between the wealthy elite and the poor masses. Women had very limited rights and lived largely secluded lives, their primary role being to manage the household and produce legitimate heirs. Medics had some freedoms, but couldn't own land or participate in politics. Slaves had none. You, with your modern sensibilities and expectations of equality in personal space, would find this deeply challenging. You couldn't just walk up and chat with anyone. Social cues were rigid, depending on your perceived status. And how would you, a time traveler, even signal that correctly? You'd be treated with disdain, indifference, or suspicion. Say the wrong thing to the wrong person, a wealthy citizen, an official, a soldier, and you could find yourself in serious trouble, maybe even facing physical violence, with no recourse to a modern legal system that protects individual rights. Speaking of danger, ancient Greece was not a safe place. Interstate warfare was frequent. Even within a city, crime existed. There was no organized police force as you understand it. Justice was often personal or handled through complex legal procedures that favored those with money and influence. Walking alone at night? Absolutely not advisable. Mugging, assault, and worse were real possibilities. Your modern expectation of public safety simply doesn't exist. Let's consider health again, specifically injuries. You trip on the uneven street and twist your ankle. What do? There are no hospitals, no emergency rooms, no trained paramedics. There might be someone who sets bones, but their understanding of anatomy and sterile practice is rudimentary at best. Infection is a massive risk. A simple sprain could lay you up for weeks or months, preventing you from working and earning, potentially leading to starvation. A broken bone, especially a compound fracture, was often a death sentence. Amputation was performed, but without anesthesia or sterile tools. The shock and subsequent infection were usually fatal. Pain relief was limited to things like opium or herbal remedies, not the range of effective pharmaceuticals you have today. And let's not forget the psychological toll. You're in a world that is fundamentally alien to you. The language barrier alone is immense, though we're assuming for the sake of this exercise that you can somehow understand and be understood, a massive, life-saving cheat code, by the way. Everything is different. The values, the beliefs, the daily rhythms, the constant presence of hardship and death. There's no news from home, no way to contact anyone you know, no familiar comforts. The isolation and culture shock would be profound. You'd be constantly on edge, confused, and terrified. Your mental health, accustomed to relative stability and access to support systems, would deteriorate rapidly. Let's think about the little things you take for granted. Clean water on demand, reliable electricity, refrigeration, fast, easy travel, instant communication, access to information. You want to know something? You just Google it. In ancient Greece, ask someone who might know if you can find them and they're willing to talk. Heated or cooled indoor spaces, soft clothing, comfortable shoes, painless dentistry, effective medicine, the ability to buy whatever food you want, whenever you want it, from all over the world. Privacy, personal space. These weren't just luxuries in ancient Greece. They were concepts that largely didn't exist or were completely unattainable for 999% of the population. Imagine trying to explain a car, a smartphone, or germ theory to someone in ancient Athens. You'd be met with blank stares, disbelief, or potentially accused of madness or witchcraft, which, incidentally, could also get you into serious trouble. Your knowledge, your skills, unless you happen to be an expert in ancient farming techniques, pottery, or basic blacksmithing, are largely useless. You can't use your computer programming degree, your marketing expertise, or your social media influencing skills to earn a living here. You are utterly without practical value in this world, unless you can figure out how to perform unskilled labor better than a local who has been doing it their whole life. Let's return to the journey through your hypothetical day. You've worked through the morning, eaten your meager lunch. The afternoon stretches ahead, just more of the same physical toil, discomfort, and risk. The sun beats down. You're sweating profusely, covered in dust and grime. Insects are buzzing around you. Flies, mosquitoes, carrying diseases like malaria, which was common. Maybe you try to engage with someone. You, with your modern ideas of politeness and conversation. You might accidentally offend someone of higher status, or say something that reveals your ignorance of local customs and beliefs. Ancient Greek religion, for instance, permeated every aspect of life. There were gods and goddesses for everything, rituals to be performed, omens to be read. Your lack of understanding, your casual dismissal of these beliefs, even if you kept it to yourself, your behavior might give it away, could mark you as an outsider, an impious person, someone to be wary of. Or worse, someone the community might blame if something goes wrong, like a bad harvest or an outbreak of disease. Superstition was powerful, and fear of the unknown could quickly turn against someone perceived as different. Consider the sheer boredom and lack of mental stimulation by modern standards. No internet, no books unless you're rich and literate, which most people weren't. No television, no radio. Entertainment was limited, festivals, religious ceremonies, maybe a visit to the theater, a major event, not a casual movie night, or simply socializing with your immediate community. If you're used to constant digital input and entertainment, the slow, repetitive pace of ancient life, punctuated only by hardship or rare celebration, will be a psychological challenge in itself. Your brain, wired for instant gratification and constant novelty, would struggle. As the day wears on, fatigue sets in. Not just the physical tiredness of manual labor, but the mental exhaustion of constant vigilance, discomfort, and anxiety. Every interaction, every step you take, feels fraught with potential peril. You're constantly aware of the smells, the dirt, the possibility of illness or injury, the social hierarchy you don't understand but know is judging you. Maybe you try to find a moment of peace, a quiet place to sit. But quiet is rare, and comfortable places to sit? Not really a thing unless you're in a private home of some means. Public spaces like the agora, marketplace, or stoas, covered walkways, are bustling and crowded. Parks and green spaces, as you know them, didn't exist. Nature is just, outside the city walls, often rugged and undeveloped. By late afternoon, the need for food becomes pressing again. Dinner, deepnon, was the main meal of the day. Again, likely more barley, legumes, maybe some vegetables if they're in season. Eaten with your hands or a simple spoon. No forks, no knives, at the table anyway. Shared from a communal pot or bowl. Table manners were different, less focused on individual servings and more on group sharing. And again, the ever-present risk of food contamination. As dusk approaches, life slows down, but danger increases. With no streetlights, the unpaved, rubbish-strewn streets become dark and even more treacherous. Your only light source would be a small oil lamp if you could afford the oil, providing flickering, inadequate illumination. This is when criminals are most active. This is when unseen obstacles on the ground can trip you, leading to injury. This is when the lack of sanitation becomes even more apparent as waste dumped during the day sits and festers in the cooling air. Your goal now is simply to get back to your cramped, uncomfortable dwelling before it gets too dark. Lock yourself in behind a simple wooden door with a basic bolt if you have one. No complex security systems here. Inside, it's dark and stuffy. You light a small oil lamp, which provides minimal light and produces smoke, further polluting the air you breathe. There's no entertainment. You might talk with whoever you live with, if anyone. You might just sit in silence, listening to the sounds of the ancient night, distant animal noises, maybe the calls of night watchmen if they exist in your area. Not guaranteed. The scurrying of vermin inside your walls. Yes, vermin. Rats, mice, cockroaches, fleas, lice, bedbugs. They are ubiquitous. They spread disease. They bite. They are a constant, unwelcome presence in your living space. You can try to get rid of them, but without modern pest control, it's a losing battle. You will be bitten. You will itch. You will potentially contract diseases from them. Sleep offers little respite. Your uncomfortable bed, if you have one, is probably infested. You're itching, you're hot or cold, you're uncomfortable, and the smells from outside still permeate the air. Your stomach might be aching from the unfamiliar or contaminated food. Your muscles are sore from the day's labor. Your mind is racing with anxiety and disorientation. And even if you manage to fall asleep, there's no guarantee you'll wake up. Disease, crime, an accident in the dark. The mortality rate in ancient Greece was incredibly high by modern standards. Childhood mortality was particularly horrifying, with a large percentage of children not surviving past the age of 5. Life expectancy for those who survived childhood was higher, but still far below what you're used to. Dying in your 30s or 40s was not uncommon, often from things that are easily treatable today. You see, your modern survival isn't just about your personal toughness. It's built on a vast, invisible infrastructure of sanitation, medicine, safety regulations, communication networks, and social support systems. It's built on thousands of years of accumulated knowledge about hygiene, nutrition, and public health. It's built on technologies that make life easier, safer, and more comfortable in countless ways you don't even notice anymore. Take water, for instance. You turn on a tap, and clean, potable water comes out. You don't think about the complex system of reservoirs, purification plants, pipes, and pumps that make that possible. In ancient Greece, getting water meant going to a public fountain or well, carrying it back yourself, and hoping it wasn't contaminated by upstream sources or the general filth of the city. Waterborne diseases like cholera and typhoid were constant threats. Food production and distribution today are incredibly efficient and safe compared to the ancient world. We have global supply chains, refrigeration, strict food safety standards, and packaging that protects food from contamination. In ancient Greece, food was local, seasonal, and perishable. Storage was difficult, pest control was minimal, and contamination was easy. Medical care is perhaps the starkest contrast. We have antibiotics, vaccines, sophisticated surgical techniques, diagnostic tools like X-rays and MRIs, anesthesia that prevents agonizing pain during procedures, and hospital staffed by highly trained professionals. Ancient Greek medicine, despite its contributions to anatomical understanding and medical ethics, like the Hippocratic Oath, was based on theories like the four humors, lacked sterile practices, and had few effective treatments for serious illnesses or injuries. A simple infection that you'd clear up with antibiotics today could kill you in days in ancient Greece. Childbirth was incredibly dangerous for both mother and child. Life was cheap, and death was always near. Even something as simple as getting around. You can walk on paved sidewalks, navigate with GPS, use public transport, or drive a car on well-maintained roads. Ancient Greece had none of that. Travel was slow, difficult, and dangerous. Walking or using animal transport on rough, dusty, or muddy tracks was the norm. Journeys between cities could take days or weeks and were fraught with risks from bandits, wild animals, or simply the elements. Your modern understanding of privacy and personal space would be constantly violated. Living in small, crowded homes, sharing communal spaces, the concept of solitude as a regular, accessible state of being barely existed for most people. You were always surrounded by family, neighbors, or strangers. And the social rules. The expectation that women remain largely indoors and out of public life. The acceptance of slavery as a natural part of the social order. The strict hierarchy based on citizenship, wealth, and gender. Your modern values will be not just alien, but potentially offensive or even dangerous in this context. Expressing opinions that challenge the established order could lead to ostracism, legal trouble, or worse. Consider the lack of information. No nos papéis, no rádio, no internet. News spread by word of mouth, often distorted and unreliable. Your understanding of the world would be limited to your immediate community and whatever rumors or official announcements filter down. Misinformation and ignorance were rampant. The psychological burden of constant insecurity. No social safety nets. No unemployment benefits. No disability support. No state-funded health care. If you couldn't work, you were dependent on charity, family, or you starved. The fear of crop failure, illness, injury, or political upheaval wasn't an abstract concept. It was a daily, pressing anxiety. So, back to our hypothetical day. It's now evening. You've survived the physical dangers, the social awkwardness, the discomfort, and the psychological shock of the day. You're exhausted, hungry, dirty, itchy, and probably feeling unwell. You're trying to sleep, but the sounds, the smells, the vermin, and the sheer physical discomfort make it difficult. And then maybe, just maybe, you hear a noise outside. Footsteps. Shouts. Is it a neighbor? A drunk? A criminal? There's no one to call. No emergency services. You just have to hope your flimsy door holds and whatever danger is out there passes by. Or maybe the illness you picked up earlier in the day starts to manifest more severely. A burning fever. Chills. Nausea. There's nothing you can do. No medicine cabinet to raid for pain relievers or fever reducers. You just lie there in the dark in your uncomfortable, vermin-infested bed and endure it. hoping you make it through the night. But statistically, given the prevalence of disease and the lack of medical care, your chances aren't great. That mild, ancient illness could easily be the thing that finishes you off before the sun even considers rising again. The romanticized version of the Middle Ages we discussed previously, with its knights and castles, that was a myth. And this version of ancient Greece, with its wise philosophers and democratic ideals untainted by reality, also a myth. The reality of daily life for the vast majority of people in ancient Greece was a brutal, uncomfortable, dangerous struggle for survival against disease, hunger, physical labor, social inequality, and environmental harshness. Your body, conditioned by a lifetime of modern sanitation, nutrition, and medical care, is a fragile thing in this environment. Your mind, accustomed to comfort, safety, and instant gratification, is even more so. You wouldn't have the physical toughness, the immune system resilience, or the psychological fortitude to cope with the constant onslaught of misery. So tonight, when you slip into your clean bed with its soft sheets in your climate-controlled room, knowing there's clean water just a few feet away and a pharmacy full of medicine down the road, take a moment. Appreciate the staggering, almost miraculous achievements that separate your life from that of someone in ancient Greece. It wasn't a golden age of easy living and intellectual pursuits for everyone. It was a tough, short, and often deeply unpleasant existence for the vast majority. And that, my friends, is why you wouldn't last a single day in ancient Greece. You are, in fact, built for a different, far less boring kind of history. A cleaner, safer, more comfortable one. Thank you for joining me on this slightly uncomfortable trip back in time.